from residents in Shanghai, in Seattle, in Rome. And as things are sort of evolving so quickly, it's been amazing to get on the ground sort of experiences, both personally and Jewishly. I want to thank Tina Price, who hosted and did so great talking with the residents. The feedback was so good. We're working to make this a regular weekly experience, and just how quickly things change. In Shanghai, they'll be doing an in-person Passover, which was sort of inconceivable before. And in Rome, things are getting more challenging and worse at this time. And so, but they are keeping up their 6 o'clock going on the roof and balcony singing. So that's a good thing. If you have any technical issues, you can go ahead and chat. And we have Eden, who will help out with anything if you can't see or hear. There's a Q&A box. So if you have a question, please put it in there and we will be able to get to it without a problem. And we're continuing at Moishe House to program. The number of virtual programs is growing very quickly. I think we have a screenshot here of just of a learning retreat. Normally we have 20 in-person learning retreats a year. This is a screenshot from Sunday's learning retreat in Europe with residents from throughout Europe and internationally around Passover. And then we also have, with the social distancing, all the Russian-speaking Jewish Moishe houses in North America got together and did a Shabbat. And so here's a picture of Shabbats from the Russian-speaking Moishe houses from North America. I think Eden's pulling that up.
Yep, 1 second.
Okay, well, when she pulls it up, it'll be fine. Okay, here's the picture of that, and these are all Russian-speaking residents from North America who are getting together. And so we're seeing the sort of unique part of Moishe House of being global in 28 countries, people coming together in ways that they never had before. And really Sabrina Mirage Naim, who's been on our board for a number of years now, has been the leader of building the international presence and direction of Moishe House from a board perspective and international committee. And so it's just amazing to have Sabrina be able to lead us in a conversation with residents from around the world. So Sabrina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. As David mentioned, my name is Sabrina Mirage Naim. I've been on the board of Moishe House for 8 years now and have really had the benefit of seeing this organization grow and blossom from something relatively small and grassroots to a far-reaching global organization impacting tens and now hundreds of thousands of people. And for me, strengthening Jewish life around the world has been a personal passion of mine and my foundation for several years. Empowering young leaders to create community in their way with their unique ideas that fit their respective communities has been the most effective method that I have experienced in engaging young Jews across multiple cultures, affiliations, and traditions. And that's something that I've found Moishe House has done so beautifully. And you're going to hear about that now from our residents who are joining us today. So I'm very excited. Generally, I'd like to say how inspired I've been by the resilience and ingenuity that has come out of a time of crisis and isolation for so many. These micro communities that have been created and nurtured by young Jews all over the world have not been shut down or set aside. They have pivoted in whatever way they can to reach out to their community members, have virtual programming, and really have made a special effort to connect with community members who are quarantined solo during this difficult time to make sure that nobody in their community feels isolated or disconnected. So Moishe House's role for young adults has stayed constant, but community builders are reaching their communities in new ways, which to me is really incredible. And I want to specify that it has not been mandated by Moishe House. During this difficult time, Moishe House has really said, stay home, stay safe. You're not required to do programming like you were before. We'll get through this together. And the residents were like, no, we have to do this. We have to stay connected with our community. And they're the ones that have led that effort in creating exciting and, very ingenious ways of staying connected with their community members. So really, we have so much to learn from the fellow members of the Moishe House family, spanning the globe, with community builders in so many different countries and all over the US. Young adults are turning to Moishe House residents to find that sense of community during what is a very difficult time. So before I introduce our panelists and jump into questions, I want to make sure I reiterate what David said, that to let you know that you can submit questions via the online feature in Zoom, the Q&A feature, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions towards the end of the session as possible. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our residents who are joining us from all over the world. I will start with Irene, who is in Moishe House, Paris, joined by her roommates, Sarah and Sandra. Irene was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Her parents are French-Brazilian. Her mom was born in Brazil. She was the daughter of Holocaust survivors who emigrated from France and Poland. And her dad is 100% French. So she's currently a full-time master's student in international security at, I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher this, Sciences Po Paris. Yeah, it's kind of, no, terrible, all right. You'll correct us. And like I said, she's joined by her two roommates, Sarah and Sandra. And this Moishe House has been in Paris since 2014, is one of 3 Moishe houses in the area, or pods, in Paris. And theirs is the first that opened in response to growing anti-Semitism in a commitment to pluralistic Jewish life. So thank you, Irene, Sarah, and Sandra, for joining us. Nir is from Moishe House, Beersheba. He was born in Jerusalem, served in the IDF for 3 years. He's an electrical engineering student at Ben Gurion University. Moishe House Beersheba works in large part with students from Ben Gurion University, which is generally an older college demographic than is typical for what we see in the US. And thank you, Nir, for joining us. We're very excited to have you. And then last but not least, Serena is from Moishe House, New Orleans. She grew up in Florida and attended Vanderbilt University. Serena works at an organization called Launchpad as part of Venture America. And the Moishe House in New Orleans has been there for over 10 years, working extensively with a mix of transplants and locals. So I'm going to start by asking a few questions before we jump into our audience questions. Irene, this one is for you. Like many parts of the world right now, France and Western Europe are really seeing have seen a recently extended lockdown to try and slow the spread of the virus. What are things like for you in Paris, for your roommates and the community?
Thanks, Sabrina, and thanks everyone for the invite. We're really glad to be here and share our experience. So Paris has been under lockdown for 17 days now. We've been home most of the time. Sarah is a doctor here, so she's been going out more than us. But the city is really completely changed. We live in a very, very busy neighborhood, and now looking through the window, we really don't see anyone anymore. Shops are closed, bars are closed, restaurants, everything is closed. We can only go out for basic shopping for supplies and to exercise 1 hour a day. And yes, we really don't hear cars anymore, which is extremely weird because we're in a very, very busy area of Paris. Locals who have houses outside the city at the beach or in the mountains, most of them have left. But it's interesting to see the student situation because Since I am at university, I have many foreign friends and also French friends who live in very, very small apartments and didn't have anywhere else to go, especially the foreigners who come from poor countries who are kind of predicting that the situation is going to be even worse in their country, so decided to stay. So Paris is living a very unique moment right now.
And last week we had a resident from Moishe House Rome who was mentioning a very similar situation to what you guys are dealing with, but they even are so restricted to the point of to be able to go to the grocery store, they need written permits to be able to leave their homes. Is that a similar situation for you as well?
Exactly. We need to fill authorization that we give ourselves to go out, because if you're caught being outside without such a document, you can receive a fine. And they're kind of evaluating even it being like giving it prison to people who are not respecting the law currently. It's really a unique moment. For example, we have an unprecedented event, which is the fact that the biggest, most important synagogue in Paris, La Victoire, it's closed for the first time in 150 years. It didn't even close during the war. So people are really trying to live day by day and without like wondering much about the future.
Yeah. And you're originally from Brazil and still have family there and connections to the Jewish community. What are you hearing from that part of the world?
So yeah, Brazil is definitely a very, very complicated situation. That's also one of the reasons why I didn't even considering going back. Even if my parents are still there, I have a sister also living in France in the south, but my parents are there, and my uncles, my cousins, most of them are there. But we have currently we have a president who is denying how serious the situation is. And then it's really lacking political coordination, because in the state of Rio, the governor is presenting the situation in one way. The mayor of Rio is presenting in a different way. They're being back and forth about opening schools, closing schools, keeping shops open, closing shops. So the population is really confused. And considering the fact that also a country which is under a very big economic recession, it's affecting most of the population who is in a very, very vulnerable position right now.
It's really unbelievable.
Yeah.
Sarah, you're an intern in general medicine, currently focused on pediatrics, and you're also volunteering right now to work on the crisis. Thank you so much for doing that. Can you tell us a bit about what you're witnessing?
Right now, so I'm supposed to be in pediatrics, to work in pediatrics, but we don't have a lot of patients coming because COVID-19 doesn't touch a lot of, it doesn't touch the children. So they need us less in our wards, so we are asked to help elsewhere. Since we have free time, we're helping in the adult emergency room because they need more interns and more doctors. So we're completing the work schedule there, mainly the night shifts and the weekends. We are also asked to help in the ICU because they are opening a lot of beds in our hospital and elsewhere. Our hospital is becoming one of the COVID centers of the area. It's not in Paris, it's outside of Paris. So they're opening beds in the ICU, and they need as much help as they can have, even if we don't have experience in intensive care. So I've never worked there. So if when they ask me to go there, I would just do like basic stuff at first, and then maybe if I learn fast, I can help managing patients and everything. Right now, we don't have a lot of supplies. We're running low in masks, disposable gowns, and hydroalcoholic gel. I think this is a situation everywhere else in the world. I had to see 3 patients on Sunday without a proper mask, just a surgical mask instead of the proper one. So people like the hospitals are asking help from everyone. So yeah, we're trying to help as best as we can, and I'm glad to be living in the Moishe house with amazing people, and they help me.
We make sure she has enough to eat all the time.
Yeah.
Wonderful support system. Nir, Israel really locked down travel and mandated social distancing earlier than most of Europe and the United States. What is life like in Israel right now for you as a student and a citizen of Beersheba?
Well, first of all, I need to tell you thank you about this opportunity to talk. I think it's very important to hear and to be sounded at those times. About your question, right now we have a sort of a lockdown. It means that you can leave your house as far as 100 meters, and this is also for a short walk. Other than that, you can get fined, or also like Irena and Sabrina said, you can go to, Irena said, like you can go to prison. You can still go outside, buy groceries, you can buy medicine, you can go out still to, if you need, for example, to help an elderly person or other stuff like that. You have some exceptions, but mainly we are in a lockdown, and we are thinking that it's going to be a full lockdown soon. And all of that is being under consideration that we don't have a government yet. And this is the third election we had this year, and still there isn't a stable government that was created. And things are very, challenging in Israel. About our classes in the university, I have to admit that the university made a very good change into the virtual world, and right now we have all of our classes through Zoom. So we'll keep studying, except of labs, that this is the only thing that was canceled. We are studying, and the curriculum is on track, like we say. We still don't know what's going to be with the exams, and we look forward to the future to see if maybe we're going to have home assignments or something like that. But yeah, things are very, very, very unique right now. Also, many of the students are staying in Beersheba right now. And I know a lot of them are living alone, or maybe with one flatmate or two flatmates, and this is also very challenging.
Have you gotten confirmation from Beersheba University that your classes will be canceled for the rest of this semester?
Not yet. Not yet. We know that some of the labs were canceled, of course, because you cannot have a lab. You don't have the equipment. Some of them were adjust to the situation. Yeah, and some courses were canceled.
Okay, thank you. Serena, you are in New Orleans, and Louisiana has been hit particularly hard. What are you seeing there in that city?
Yeah, definitely has. Also, like everyone else, just want to thank you all for being here. And it's so interesting to hear from so many different parts of the world. But New Orleans has gotten a lot of attention in the American media lately. People think that Mardi Gras this year was perhaps a breeding ground for coronavirus. So in a city where we really look forward to big celebrations and people love to come together and be with other people, it's definitely tough when those personal connections can't be in the same place. New Orleans is also a city that has a really big focus on tourism and hospitality, music and entertainment. And so obviously, you know, people aren't coming to visit, hospitality workers are really struggling. A lot of the artists and musicians in the city have been struggling as well, since that's such a big part of our economy. There have been some really great community relief efforts, but people are definitely trying to figure out how we adapt. This time of year is what people call festival season. It's, you know, jazz fest, big music fest, things people look forward to all year. Obviously, all of that is canceled, which has a lot of, you know, personal, economic consequences. So, you know, everyone's just figuring out, like everywhere else, what the new normal is. But it has been really nice to see that the Jewish community in New Orleans has coordinated, I think, a really positive response. They've been sending really consistent email communication on behalf of the Jewish Federation. And they just set up a volunteer program where you can volunteer to either do things like grocery deliveries or calling members of the community to check in. So as a Moishe house, we're trying to figure out if there's a way we can work with them more consistently. definitely, you know, trying to figure this out and trying to see how we can help.
That's wonderful. And in that same line of questioning, how are you ensuring that you're staying connected with your community, with people retreating to their homes and that potential feeling of isolation? What are you as a Moishe House doing to stay connected?
Yeah, kind of like Nir said, a lot of people in our community either live alone now or their roommates have gone to go be with their families. So a lot of people don't really have any connection in their homes. So we're definitely trying to take our role as a community builder seriously during this time. A couple weeks ago, we were supposed to be doing a challah making event where people were going to come to our house and learn to make their own challah. Obviously, we could not have people doing that together, but so we decided to invite the guests who had signed up to select a flavor of challah. My roommate Sasha and I made a bunch of mini challahs for everybody, and then we walked around our neighborhood and delivered them to people from our community. So that was really awesome, especially while there was a little bit less restriction of movement. I think people really appreciated the chance to see some people and get a fresh baked challah. And then since then, we've been doing regular Shabbat candle lightings. First week we had delivered the challahs, but since then we've been sharing the link widely. So we've had people from our New Orleans community as well as from our various other networks come and join that. So it's just been super nice to have that and be intentional. We had between 20 and 30 people on Zoom for this candle lighting for the last 2 weeks. So just I think it's been a nice way for people to come together, and we're trying to figure out what works like everyone else. One idea we've toyed with is doing something to support the local businesses. We're thinking of doing some sort of giving circle where we can kind of come together and decide, you know, which businesses should we support? How could we work with local nonprofits during this time? New Orleans is a super, I think, community focused city. But overall, we just want our community members to know that we're there for them and we're doing our best to stay connected to everyone during this time.
Love that. I love hearing the creative ideas that are blossoming out of what otherwise is a challenging time. Irene, I'd love to hear about how you and your roommates are also providing that same connection with your community.
Yeah, so since we understood that our programs would have to go online, first we had to cancel, of course, the ones we had planned. And because we were in kind of like a weird situation, I have a couple days break from school, and Sandra was also like, I don't know how work will organize, will be organized. So we kind of have like 1 free week, and we decided to do as much as possible. And Sarah was, of course, working. So we were most of the time at home thinking, what could we do? So last week alone, I think we had 5 events. So yeah, for Shabbat, Sandra has been leading candle lightings, but some singing and Kabbalah Shabbat before the start of Shabbat. We had a singing event 2 Sundays ago with people from all over the world singing together. I think we were 20, 25 people. Last week we had 2 conferences. So one was an interfaith event with people from 5 different faiths discussing how their communities are organizing it, themselves in order to organize alternative ways of praying when we cannot be all together in the same place. And then we have also a conference with a liberal rabbi about Netilat Yadayim. We thought the timing was good to talk about washing our hands. Yeah, I mean, many things. Coffee, yeah, we did a coffee break online. This week, we're gonna have a cooking workshop with a concert. So we're gonna do Italian night. So we're cooking focaccia and having a community member singing for us. And we're also organizing, as Serena mentioned, a giving circle. We believe it's important to think about the Jewish community, how it's organizing, how can we help the broader French community, and also internationally, because we know that some other countries are facing or will face situations even worse than the one we're seeing in Europe. So we're trying to think of ways that we can also not only have fun, but also be useful.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Nir, how are you staying engaged with your Beersheba community?
All right. So on a daily basis, we're used to have house packed with people, and really all of the residents in the house, they have a passion for it, for events and for people and for the community that we are creating. And it's a really hard time for us not to have this kind of an open door. And I think, first of all, one of our main challenges of creating events, and we talked about it a lot, is how we can create events and activities that they will appeal to a person that he's already sitting in front of a screen all day long. And we need to be attractive enough and appealing enough to convince him that, okay, what we are doing in here is worth for you to listen and to stay and to be active. So we had few ideas. I think also hearing other ideas in here is a very good thing also for us, for me at least. One of our ideas, first of all, came from hearing the community needs, and during those times, managing in let's say with your health is very important, but also your mental health and how to deal with those situations in terms of how I'm not getting crazy. Really, like staying in the house all day long, it's very difficult. So we, together with another organization in the university, many organizations are trying now to have events. So we're trying to cooperate and do mutual events. So with another organization in the university that they are dealing with mental health, we're trying to arrange a lecture with a professional mental health care that he can provide us some tips and guidance of how to pass this time. So this is one of the events. Another event that we're trying to work on, my flatmate Tal, that she's not here, she's trying really hard, not promising that it will work, but really hard to bring a Neta Brasilai to maybe a conversation or a show in here in the Moishe House platform. We're still working on it. We're trying to do some things that they will really appeal to our community members. We had another idea, which is how to do a Passover together. Most of the ads that we're going to do Passover dinner in the house, and we're still not sure how it's going to be, but we are playing with the idea of having an afikoman, a virtual afikoman, and we are toying with it. We're still not sure how it's going to play out eventually, but it's another idea that we're trying to maybe forum and to finalize.
I love it. I have to say, I think that it's really important to hear that you specify that you're coming up with creative and fun ideas, but catering to the needs of your community. And that's the most important thing, is that you are all catering to your community. It's not coming from on high. Nobody's telling you what types of programs to do or how to do them. You all have unique needs that you are trying to fulfill for your community members. And that is something that is so, so specific to Moishe House and such a beautiful part of this organization. So thank you all so much. I'm gonna switch it over to some audience questions. The first one actually near to your story of the virtual afikoman and a virtual Seder. We have Shuva Broadley, who was a past peer-led retreat participant, and she's asking if any of you are doing Zoom Seders.
We're still talking about it. We're still not sure. We know many of the students who live in Beersheba are not going back to their parents because they are afraid of bringing back home whatever they have. Not that they are not in health, but you never know, and you want to be on the safe side.
Right.
We are still working on it. I think that for now, the residents, we will have a Seder in here, and we are planning ahead. We're still trying to shape it.
What about the rest of you all?
Yeah, we're still figuring out in New Orleans as well. I think we're figuring out what the best virtual program is that works for everybody, but one idea is, instead of doing Seder, trying to think of what's some other content during the Passover week that we can do, to keep people feeling connected. I know a lot of people's parents are doing Zoom Seders and things like that. So we're trying to think of maybe some accompanying programming that can go, beyond just a Seder. So not sure exactly what that is yet, but we're hoping to be a little bit creative.
In Paris, we're thinking about a repetition of like a rehearsal of the Seder, yes, before the Seder, because a big part of our community is more Orthodox. So it's difficult to make something virtual. I mean, in the night of Pesach, but also to bring the joys to be together, also before, and have more fun, less strict halachic parts, so more comment and more fun in a previous event, maybe.
Thank you. And a comment from Ben Weinberg for Nir that he's planning on a virtual Seder for his family. So he'd love to hear any ideas you have for a virtual Afikomen. And frankly, I think that it's a fascinating idea. So if you come up with a good way of doing it, please let the rest of us know.
I will.
We have a question from Alex Fuxman, sorry. A staff at JUF and Moishe House Chicago, Federation in Chicago, who asks about Zoom bombing, which I've never heard of before, but apparently when bad actors interrupt Zooms, and I don't believe that we've ever had an issue with that or have experienced anything like that, but it's something that we're monitoring and observing to make sure that that's not an issue. Is that true of everyone? Nobody's really had Zoom bombing?
No, it's the first time I hear about it. Sandra's mentioning that she heard the concept, but never happened to us, no.
Okay. David, do you have anything to say about that?
We haven't experienced it. We have been reading about it, and our risk management team's looking at it. And for those of you listening, it's basically people going in and typing in random attendee numbers and then joining in on people's meetings and disrupting them. But we have not had that situation. We are providing to all of the houses the Zoom Pro accounts for them, and Moishe House is covering that as one of the multiple ways we're supporting the houses and the residents.
Great. One question is from Jonathan Camel or Kamel. Sorry, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering people's last names. The question is, what do you think the long-term impacts of COVID will be on the Jewish community where you live? So let's start with Serena. If you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Moishe House and then just Jewish organizations in general have done a really good job of building community during this time. And so I think, some of the synagogues are doing live streams of services and things like that, making things more accessible. And so I'm hoping that some things might stay, maybe people that can't leave their homes as easily will still be able to access, services and Jewish gatherings. I think it's shown that, New Orleans, which is already a super tight-knit, connected city, is finding even more ways to connect during this time. And I think it's just shown that the Jewish organizations are super collaborative. They're not very, competitive in New Orleans. I think it's very fitting for the city. So I think everybody's responded in seeking more connection, and I'm hoping that some of those new relationships continue after this is all over.
Mm-hmm. This question I'm going to point to Nir. It's from Dan Hammerman, and he's saying, do you feel that virtual programming is an efficient way to conduct Moishe House events going forward? Do you think that you will adapt this method more than in-person events once COVID-19 restrictions have ended?
For sure, no. At least for my house, we really feel that the gap of not having activities and not seeing the people in here in our house. It's very difficult for me to see how it can replace it. And we are having lots of conversation in the house, the residents, and how difficult it is to create and to establish those connections. I can't see anywhere it goes. But I have to mention that the COVID has some benefits, and we need to look at the good side of it. And people are being more involved, and they are volunteering. And I hear lots of voices that offering their help, and it has some good sides if you look at it on the right perspective.
Yeah, I have to, if I can chime in here just to say that I think there is a certain amount of magic that happens when people come together in person and experience it in person. And sometimes, when you guys are hosting events, you're opening your door to strangers. to people who you've never met before, who maybe don't know anyone else in your house, and they're taking a risk to come and be part of a program. And there is something really special about the connections that are made and the bonds that are made in person that probably are not the same online. Although I will say that having the benefit of virtual programming, for lack of a better option right now, I think is something that we're very fortunate to have as an option. And maybe there will be certain, online learning programs that would be better suited for, for virtual, perhaps if there are residents around the world that are wanting to join. But the magic of Moishe House is really in person. We have a tip on virtual afikomen from Daniel Michelson Horowitz, who chimed in with, hide the afikomen in your own home and then have those on Zoom search by leading you around your home on camera. Hot and cold might help. Very good tip, Dan. Love it. I believe we have one more question coming in. Maybe in the meantime, okay. From Robin Schneider for Near, you mentioned classes at BGU are happening 100% virtually, except the labs. Is that the same as other Israeli universities?
Yeah, most of them has, as far as I know, transferred into virtual teaching.
Yeah, and I think that's true of most in the US as well. Is that also true in France? Do you guys know?
Yes, at least for the private universities, which are not necessarily the majority, we all moved to online through Zoom classes. Some of them have been canceled. Some other need some adjustments, especially language courses, which are trickier to handle online. But yes, we've been having classes online since a week now.
Mm-hmm. And Irene, while I have you, I think it's really important to hear from Nir that there are some silver linings to all of this. And I'd love to hear from you and your roommates. What are some of the benefits that you have experienced with your virtual programming or with having to pivot and get more creative in this time?
Okay. Yeah, so that's actually a big topic of conversation among us, because we always have people that we would like to have coming to our house to participate in the event or even to lead the events, in cases of professors, rabbis, people that are expert in topics we would like to explore that usually we can't have because they're not based in Paris. So for example, one of the events we had last week, the rabbi I mentioned, he's Spanish. He's someone Sandra met in another French city a couple years ago, I believe so. And they remain in contact. And now, because we're doing virtual events, we had the occasion to invite him. And through that event, we met someone who lives in another French city who has a son living in the US, close to some of the Californian houses. So we made that bridge too, because he was looking for some Jewish life around him, and we were in a position to help. So that was definitely a big highlight of last week and of having online events. And for me personally, it was the first occasion I have my parents participating in something. They are very curious and very proud of the work we're doing, but it's always through, they hear about it through like me telling what happened and sharing the events afterwards and pictures. And they had the occasion to join in one of the conferences that we held last week.
As far as silver linings go, I think there's something really beautiful about the fact that there's a shared experience here. You know, the reason why this panel is so inspiring is because you have people from all over the world who are in different countries with different traditions and different languages and cultures and everything that you can imagine. But there's a shared experience here. And in times of adversity, in times of challenge, you're seeing this resilience. You're seeing this incredible bond that is happening across borders, across cultures, across ethnicities, and and that is something that we're also very proud with Moishe House to be able to say. Even in the best of times, there is a shared experience in what these residents are able to create for their communities. So my last question is for Serena. I'd like to know how we, as the larger Jewish community, can best support you in this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, Moishe House is definitely, I've been impressed with the ability to pivot and, providing Zoom accounts to us, things like that, making it possible for us to do virtual programming. And I just think the more sharing of resources, the better. I know there are other groups, like my summer camp is doing a bunch of virtual programming. A lot of the other Jewish nonprofits are sharing resources for, how to do a Torah study online, how to do your Seder online, things like that. And I think Moishe House has always acted as a gathering place to kind of bring people together who have all of these different resources. So I think just making sure those things are available to us, knowing that there is so much out there that can help us really help our own communities during this time, is just going to be the most important thing for us to be impactful while we all get through this.
Fantastic. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us, and I'm going to pass it on to David to help us wrap up. But from me, thank you. Best of luck to you all in this time. Thank you for holding up your communities in your respective countries and cities, and for being leaders in a challenging time. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, Sabrina and Nir, Irene, Serena. Yeah, really, thank you so much for taking this time, getting to hear from young adult leaders, both about what's happening in your local community and also Jewishly. The impact and what you're doing is incredible. I'll also share that you'll hear soon we have 4 Jewish educators in North America, also one in Paris and Moscow, and we'll be sending out the Passover opportunities for both places where you can log in and join a Seder if you need one to go to, also how to lead one virtually. We'll be doing workshops on that as well, leading up to Passover. So those materials are being put together this week, and want to let the folks who are on know that we'll send out an email sharing where we'll be next week at 11 a.m. Eastern time to hear from more communities around the world. I think it'll be particularly interesting if we can hear more. We now have 3 Moishe houses in Brazil that are all less than 2 years old to hear a bit about what's happening down there based upon some of the things you shared, Irene, and other places in the world. So I hope we all get through this together. I know we will. Thank you for joining us, and may we all have good health and a good week. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.